Hi, so if you want to move to Vermont and have a homestead, here's what you want to look at. First things first is look up the registered sex offenders in the area that you're looking for property. If you have children who are going to public schools, you want to look at the schools. If you have children who are not going to public school, you want to look into homeschooling and homeschooling resources and homeschooling regulations. If it's just you yourself looking for property, what you want to look at is still the registered sex offenders, just so you're aware of that. Also, I would recommend looking at the crime rate in the area. I don't even think it really matters, but sometimes you just move and then you're like, oh, my house got robbed 3 times and it kind of sucks to live here. And also, the crime rate that's reported might not be an accurate representation of the reality of what's going on, because a lot of crime happens in the backwoods and no one says anything about it, So when you find a good area that you're thinking about, I'd look at those things. As far as property tax rate, that's going to depend on how much property you're buying, and it's going to depend on the structures on your property, and it's going to depend on the area you live in. My mom lives in the capital city of Vermont, which is Montpelier, and she has what's taxed as a 3-bedroom house, and that property tax bill is $5,000 a year. And that's an old, falling apart house also with a lot of water damage, and that's still her tax. When you're buying property in the backwoods, if it's raw land, your tax is going to be probably pretty cheap. Obviously, the more acreage you get, the more it goes up. And your homestead declaration is only good for, I think, 1.5 acres. It's not good for the entire plot of land if you have 200 acres. If you do have 200 acres, you can probably put some of that in public use. And I can't get into public use in this video. I would have to research it more. But I think it's a tax break. Otherwise, if it wasn't, no one would do it. Anyway, the next thing you want to be aware of is your retirement is going to be taxed in Vermont. I have had people call the tax department who live in Florida where it's not taxed. And they're like, oh, Vermont looks so nice. I want to move here. Can you tell me about taxes? I'm like, yeah. We have pretty high property taxes, but it depends on your property and it depends on where you live. And also, pretty much everything is getting taxed. Your retirement gets taxed with your income tax that you file for the state. And all your other income, pretty much all your other income, is going to be on your HI 144. That's your household income schedule. Again, if you are a property owner, you have to, you can't get your property tax adjustment without being a resident. Property tax adjustment and renter rebate is only for residents. And I've had other people, it's a big problem in Vermont with the renter rebate, and that doesn't have anything to do with moving here to start a homestead, but I'm just going to say this anyway. We have students who come to UVM and stuff, like Norwich University, which is a military school in Northfield, and they rent apartments with 0 income, right, because they're students, so they pay everything on their student loans. And then they file for a renter rebate, and because they have no money, they're eligible for the maximum amount, which is $3,000, right? So you can imagine tons of college kids filing this to get $3,000. We request your license, because if your license isn't from Vermont, then you're not a Vermont resident. And so you have to prove that you're a Vermont resident, because the program is only for residents. It's not for people who are going to college here for 4 years and then going to leave the state. So anyway, back to property tax. There's 2 types of property tax. You have residential and you have non-residential. If you're coming to live here on a homestead, you're going to be a resident. And each town picks their own rate. So they're different for every single city and town in the whole state. In Montpelier, the residents have to pay a higher property tax than businesses. I can make another video on my personal thoughts about why that is, but I can't discuss that now because it's a lot of stuff. But what's going to happen is when you find your property that you want to buy, you're going to ask the realtor, like, what's the property tax for this for the year, and then they'll tell you, and then you'll know if you want to deal with that or not. If you're getting raw land, that's going to be the easiest thing to do. But also you want to be aware of any zoning. Now, what we do in Hyde Park is basically kind of to avoid all zoning issues. Everything is mobile. And that's actually not why that happened. But this is why I wanted a tiny house on wheels, is because I am not getting taxed. Here's the other thing. And this is going to be an issue. This is important. You want to find out, basically you want to somehow find out if you can live there full time. Because like me going to Hyde Park and living in a camper, I'm not a resident because I don't have a valid address. And I said this in my other video about contacting the Department of Labor. But now we're getting into property. So we cannot have a mailbox there. Like, basically we need a mailbox for it to be a valid address, because then it won't be 0 Flurry Road. But we can't have that unless we have a taxable structure, such as a house. Yeah, I think it would have to be a house. I don't think a shed is going to work. Like, oh, we built a shed out of pallets. Come tax us an extra $20 a year so that we can have a mailbox so that I can use that for a cleaning company I worked at 2 days. Oh, my God. I don't even want to think about it anymore. Anyway, so if you're going to have a homestead, you're going to want to find out what you need to do. I tell everybody, get a P.O. box. Just get a P.O. box. And then, see, that's why I have to make a video about the DMV, because I have to call them, the Department of Labor and the Department of Motor Vehicles. I have to call both of them and ask them about how to get a valid address when you just live in a homestead. You have property, you live on your property. What do you do about this? Because there's a lot of things that you're going to need a valid address for. That's what it seems like. And I can't answer those questions because I have to call those departments first and see what they say. So subscribe to my channel and look forward to those videos coming soon. The other thing, what did I say? I said registered sex offenders you want to look at. I said schools you want to look at if you have kids. Your property tax rates, resident and non-resident, everything's taxed. Oh yeah. All your income too. If you end up filing for a homestead declaration or a renter rebate, all of your income that isn't necessarily in your income tax still has to go on your household income schedule, because what they're looking at is how much income do these people have compared to how much rent they pay out. I don't think that covers, I'm sure that doesn't cover everything. And I know I'm missing something. What am I missing? I can't think of it right now. So let me know your other questions. I think that our, one thing which is stupid that a lot of people don't do, but sometimes you get caught anyway, is because Vermont has income tax. I'm a Vermont resident, so if I go to New Hampshire and I buy stuff, I have to like know that and remember that or keep a receipt or whatever, and I have to pay Vermont the sales tax for the stuff I buy in a state that doesn't have sales tax. A lot of people don't do that, and a lot of people actually go to New Hampshire, especially when they live close to the border. They go to New Hampshire to buy stuff, and they don't do that. One time when I worked there, someone bought a boat, and the tax that they ended up owing to Vermont was like $5,000 for the tax on the boat. So be aware of that if you think you're going to try to escape sales tax. A lot of people do, but I have to just tell you, it's tax fraud if you do it, which I don't want to get in a conversation about tax fraud either, and why that is anyway, that's another thing to just be aware of. I don't think our sales tax is too bad. I know that in Montpelier, the tax, like they actually, when I buy coffee from Cumbies, the tax is an extra cent, one more penny than in other cities. And it's so annoying. And I know it's just a penny, but I want to keep that penny. So they have other like little kind of things like that. And that can be from city to city. And I can't tell you about all the cities because I grew up in Montpelier, and also I don't really buy a lot of things, so I'm not too familiar with the sales tax. Yeah, there's something else I'm forgetting about having a homestead here. Honestly, I would highly recommend it. If you get a seasonal camp, I don't think you're going to be able to be a resident. But honestly, if you just want to like keep to yourself, especially if you want to be out of the system, then I would recommend it even more instead of trying to like jump through hoops and try to get any kind of help with anything. Just buy a piece of property that you can afford to tax on and just be there and keep to yourself. And you know, if you're not in the system, then it doesn't matter if you have a valid address. If you have a license from somewhere else, you know, who cares if you have to pay a non-residential tax rate? If you buy a property that you can afford, let's say the sales tax, even if it was $1,000 a year, you know, if you have raw land, that's not that bad. And I would just make sure you find a good area where basically where people are going to leave you alone and where the city's not going to be all up in your business, because there's a lot of backwoods in Vermont. My dad, when he lived in Northfield, got like a bullet through his house. Like people in Northfield, I love them. God bless them. They're great. But they like to, you know, get drunk and shoot guns. Everyone out there is like, you know, getting drunk, doing mechanics, you know, shooting guns by the river. And it's a good time. It's really fun. I'd highly recommend making friends in Northfield, hanging out with them. Maybe not. A lot of people do drugs in Vermont, too. I don't think I said this in this video because I had to redo this because a little kid kept coming in. But you might also want to look at the crime rate. Now, the crime rate that's reported is not going to reflect the reality of crime here. But if you look at rent prices in the area, the lower the rent is, then the more impoverished the place is going to be. That's why they have lower rent prices. Like in the capital city of Montpelier, here we have the tax department, the Department of Motor Vehicles. We have all these state buildings. We have the, what's that? The legislature house. What's that called? I don't know, but we have that building. We have like a museum and stuff. And in Barrie, they have the courthouse, and they have a whole bunch of FSU housing. And they also have lower rent in Barrie and higher rent in Montpelier. And I think they have a higher tax in Montpelier. Now, the mayor in Barrie is actually, well, not the one now. I don't know if he's corrupt, but the one that we had before in Barrie was, like, super corrupt, burnt down his own building, and, like, tried to collect all the insurance, blah, 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 blah. That's all hearsay, by the way. I did not do a bunch of research on that, but, I mean, that's, like, the kind of general rumor, because after his building burned down, there was like a huge investigation on it, and everyone was saying that he like basically did it on purpose to collect insurance.
I'm going back.
You're going back where?
To get my scooter.
Okay. She's going to get the scooter. So I think that's all that I have to say. Let me know. I know I left a lot of stuff out, but honestly, you want to make sure you have good neighbors. And oh yeah, the thing about Williamstown, you want to check your water, because something happened. I can't remember the full story. I could ask my dad and make a video on it, but something happened where Williamstown, there's two towns I know of in Vermont that don't have zoning, Williamstown and Corinth. Williamstown, something happened where they ended up having bad water. So I would say make sure you have your water supply set. Thank you for moving my hat. Yeah, make sure you have your water supply set. You know, if you're going to do a homestead, just do everything off-grid. Keep to yourself. Make sure you know your neighbors. Make sure that you're going to like the area that you're living and the people who are your neighbors. That's what you want to do. And if you're in a backwoods town, people usually keep to themselves and stick to themselves. And the higher the rent is and the higher the property tax rate is, that could be more like of a touristy kind of place, more of a town in your business kind of place. And if that's what you want, then maybe that's for you. It's definitely not what I want. Which is fine because I'm going to live in Hyde Park. So, yeah, there's a lot to consider about moving here. And, yeah, let me know if you have any other questions. I know I skipped a lot, but like I said, if you're just gonna be off-grid and keep to yourself and not have, like, be in a historical district and stuff, if you're not worried about having a valid address, if you're good with just getting a P.O. box, then you're not gonna have to jump through all the hoops that are involved with taxes. But either way, if you buy a boat in New Hampshire and the tax department finds out, don't be surprised when you get an extra $5,000 bill for buying a huge freaking boat. Why? It's so stupid. Especially when all you have to do is switch your residency to New Hampshire and then still have land in Vermont. Like, who cares if you're a resident or not? It doesn't even matter. Okay, so now Layla wants to show me her stuffies, and I have to go. Let me know if you still have questions. I tried to find the stuff about the rate. I tried to find the rate for how they tax retirement on the Vermont Department of Taxes website, and I couldn't find it. So I can't tell you exactly what that is, but if you Google it, something pops up. It feels high, but it's like your income, so it's based on the rest of your income. Do you make $1 million a year? Are you a doctor? Or do you work part-time at McDonald's and make nothing? Or make $25,000? So yeah. Subscribe. Shalom.